This is a day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. And I consider it an honor to get us started off tonight with a young man who is doing such a wonderful work and a much needed work in our community. Join with me as we welcome Brother Kevin Smith. Amen. 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 CEO of Restoration Community Resources, Inc. Amen. Amen. Welcome to Atlanta Live.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight, Pastor Doe.
Amen. Good to have you. Good to have you. But I'm especially excited about the work that you're doing. I think what you're doing is so needed until I'm going to kind of bypass some of the formalities about where you are, who you are, where you're from. And let's just kind of talk about it, because tell us about Restoration Resources.
Well, Restoration Community Resources is an outreach ministry, and what our goal is to impart and to empower young men and women to be all that God has created them to be.
All right.
Basically allowing them to see the creative power and the purpose that God has put in them.
Amen.
And allow them the opportunity to explore and flourish in what God has allowed them to be. Our axiom is, just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean that you can't do it.
That's right.
And that it's not for you to do.
That's exactly right.
So we just really want them to be able and equipped to be all that God can have them to be.
Now, that's interesting. I mean, that seems like it's so much. It sounds like a combination of parenting, mentoring, and everything else they need entering to move to make that transition from childhood into effective young adult and then entrepreneur. How do you find the young people with which you work?
Well, what we do is we allow our works and the results of what we do to speak for who we are.
Okay.
We don't advertise it over the internet. We don't advertise it through flyers or anything of that nature. We allow the young men and women that we mentor to tell others. Because what happens many times is when you say mentoring to people, it really depends on what setting you're using the word mentoring in.
Okay.
I've noticed that when I was in corporate America and you said that you were going to be mentored, it was a very positive aspiration for you to be mentored. When we mention it in various settings, many of the parents will say, oh, you know, my son or my daughter, they're straight A students. They don't need mentoring. Well, mentoring basically means, a mentor means to be a guide,
a mold,
to be a coach, to enlighten, to show someone and take people to places where they've never been. And we want to bring that back into a positive mold in the church.
Is that done within the parameters of entrepreneurship for them? Is that the crevice that you've captured?
Right. What we feel is unique about our mentoring group is it is an entrepreneurial mentoring group.
Right.
We're teaching them education is very important, but we're also teaching them that entrepreneurial is as important. It's an opportunity for you to be creative. It's an opportunity for the God-given talents in you to be exemplified, as opposed to holding them in. As we were talking earlier, we're talking about being inventors. And so we allow them to explore and to experience whatever's in them that they can do it. And we want them to be the next leaders of this generation.
That's interesting. Now, how long have you been in existence?
Well, the ministry itself has been in existence for 14 years.
Okay.
But the last 6.5 years, we've been focusing directly on the entrepreneurial aspect of mentoring young men.
Entrepreneur. We keep going back there, and I think that that's a very vital niche, because it's a niche that is too often not preached. Becoming a good employee, working 40 years and retiring with your Social Security and whatever else has been preached so long. But I think it's a refreshing approach to say not just work for the business, but own it, develop it, start it, originate, and you provide those skills to help them get started and developing and creating a corporation.
And it's great that you mentioned that, Pastor Doe, because we're teaching them things that they would not get in the educational environment per se. We're teaching them public speaking.
Okay.
We're teaching them how to patent a product,
Okay.
how to copyright a product, why it's important to have a trademark. And you talked earlier about being an entrepreneur and having opportunity and choices. Choices empower you.
That's right.
And we feel that when Jesus went out to get the disciples, they were entrepreneurs. They weren't working for anybody. They basically were able to pick up what they were doing and go and follow Jesus. And that's the example that we want to be to them. We want them to be able to see godliness in the mentors. I wouldn't be able to do anything I do right now without the men that are supporting me in the mentoring program. They don't get paid. They volunteer their time. They just allowed me to come on the show and talk about the mentoring group tonight.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But I think that that's so vitally important because what are the ages that you personally deal with the young men from, basically?
Well, we want to get them early. So
Okay.
we start them at 10 years old.
10. Okay.
10 years old, and then they stay in the mentoring group up until they're 18, 19 because they're graduating from high school. And what we were talking about earlier, they don't have an expiration date.
Right.
In other words, they don't graduate and just leave and never come back.
Right.
We've had an opportunity to see a few of the young men actually start out with the mentoring group, graduate from college, and then come back, and we've made them mentors now so that we have an age group for the young men that are coming in to the mentors who are their age. So they're just not looking at the older men and just saying, oh, these men are too old. They don't really understand where we are.
Right.
So it's an opportunity to bring the young men together with the teenagers, and they begin to mentor as well as having the older men mentor them as well.
I think that's awesome because it's one thing for them to hear you say something. It's quite another thing for them to hear it from somebody who's been through your program or who's been in the program for a while, and for them to come back and say, it works. Listen to what he said, it works. You know, and I think that's truly needed. If I'm not mistaken, you said that there have been several of the young men who've gone on and to college and are pursuing academic degrees, higher degrees, and some maybe have attained them over the years. Is that right?
That is correct. And we also have an opportunity to give scholarships to these young men so that we're not just imparting to them and saying, go and make college the best way you can. We're giving them an opportunity to get a scholarship. The criteria is that they just have to graduate from high school and pursue higher education. We had an opportunity this year where an individual was pursuing college, but he had not got accepted in Tuskegee yet. So we still gave him a scholarship pursuant to him moving on into Tuskegee. So
I think that's true. That's truly wonderful, because there are so many silent warriors like yourself who have not sought to be in front of the camera or leading the parade, but mentoring and pushing and impacting and infilling and quantifying and qualifying those that are out there in this race. And I think that that's an awesome thing to do. And what led you to do that?
Well, having a son.
Okay.
Having a son and seeing some of the challenges that he's going through and what he wanted to do in life. And we wanted to have our son have an opportunity to pursue what he wanted at a young age. He wants to be a broadcaster now. He's 15 years old, and he already knows what he wants to do. Right now, as we speak, he's in broadcasting camp. The other thing that made me want to pursue this is that parents have an opportunity to work with their children in an environment outside of the home. So we feel that in our mentoring group, it gives the parents an opportunity to work together. And we have programs for the parents too. Like we have financial seminars for the parents, we have budgeting, we have investment programs. So it's not just for the children and the parents dropping them off like a babysitting service. The parents are coming in, the parents are getting involved, and the whole family is being benefited from the working of the mentoring group.
Well,
So
I think that that's awesome, because the more the family is involved, the more they know, the more effect that they can have
Precisely.
positively, and the more that they can understand what it is that the child is trying to pursue.
Precisely.
I think that that's a wonderful endeavor, and I thank God for how you're moving and making an impact. We hear so much nowadays about the negative side of the youth movement, but it's good and refreshing to meet someone who's actually making a difference in a positive direction for our youth.